So, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, there's not really a lot to talk about this week, so I had to get creative, and I wanted to get creative for all of my friends and all of my supporters that love watching baseball. I'm very, very excited to see baseball again. Before I get into this, I do want to say this because I feel like it's a good time to say it. Last year I didn't watch a ton of baseball. And the reason for that is because, quite frankly, I felt really burned out from baseball. For those of you who don't know, I was a baseball player in college. I've been playing baseball since I was 4 years old. And for me, it just kind of felt like I had had enough of baseball at that point. I didn't want to be around it. I didn't want to announce it. I didn't want to talk about it. Last year was a little bit difficult for me in terms of wanting to really step out and watch a lot of baseball. But I will say this, I think for the first time in quite a while, I am actually yearning to watch some baseball. I actually kind of am excited to sink my teeth in and watch not even just the Red Sox, who I'm obviously a fan of. As you can see, that's the wrong direction. As you can see over there. I'm excited to watch the Mariners. I'm excited to watch the Twins, and I'm excited to watch the Guardians, and I'm excited to watch the Blue Jays, and I'm excited to continue to see if the Angels are going to be not good forever with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on that team. We'll see. I'm excited to see the new look Mets and the new look Phillies and the new look Padres and all the other just wonderful, talented players that we have. I'm actually very excited. So, what I want to jump into today for you guys is I am going to predict every division winner, and I'm going to predict for all of you every award winner for Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, and MVP. I'm not going to do Comeback Player of the Year, mostly because I'm not super familiar with, any candidates necessarily that might be coming back. The only one that I can think of off the top of my head would be Fernando Tatis Jr. I don't, other than that, on the American League side, I at least off the top of my head, I can't really think of somebody that would be an obvious choice on the AL side. So I'm going to stay away from that. So right now, like I said, I will predict every single division winner and every single award winner. So for the AL East, I have the New York Yankees winning the division. I think that's a pretty obvious choice here. I obviously could see the Blue Jays, if they if they do take a huge step forward, I could very much see the Blue Jays being a fantastic team, a dominant team with a really good rotation and an even better lineup. But right now, I think the Yankees were able to, kind of keep the team that they had together, which won 100 games last year, I think 99 games last year, and add Carlos Rodon. So I think for me, I'm going to go with the Yankees and stick to my guts on that. As much as it hurts for me to say it, as much as I hate to say it, that's what I'm going with. So the Yankees are going to win the AL East. Next up, for the American League West, I have the Houston Astros winning that division. That is, to me, not even particularly much of an argument. I love the Seattle Mariners. I do. But the Houston Astros are an absolute juggernaut. They won the World Series last year, and obviously they lost Justin Verlander. But outside of that, this team is going to be just about as dominant as they were last year. I don't see any reason for me to think otherwise. So for me, it's Astros all the way. Would I love to see Seattle win the division? Oh, yes. I definitely would love to see it. But for me, the Astros, I just think are going to keep on winning the division until somebody forcibly takes it from them. And I do not think Seattle right now has the talent to do so. I love the moves Seattle made in the offseason, but I just don't think that they are ready for that smoke yet. But we will see. But right now, I'm going with the Astros. Next up, the AL Central. Obviously, the Cleveland Guardians won the division last year. But I say that this year there will be a new division king because I am going to go with the Chicago White Sox. Now, I know. Why the Chicago White Sox? They were terrible last year. They underperformed like crazy, and they didn't really do a whole lot in the offseason to make themselves better. But here's the thing. They wildly underperformed last year. I don't know of anyone who thought that the White Sox were going to be as bad as they were. And I don't know if there was anybody that thought Cleveland was going to be as good as they were. I think that Cleveland outperformed their talent, and I also believe that Chicago vastly underperformed their talent. Looking at the rosters, I find that they are both very, very similar. I think that the only difference for me is that the White Sox bullpen and their rotation is just a little bit deeper. I think that they both have dominant closers, although Liam Hendricks, I believe, is getting cancer treatment now, so he may not play at all this season. So, maybe that's, an advantage for the Guardians. But even so, I think the rest of the bullpen in Chicago is better than the rest of the bullpen outside of Emmanuel Clase for the Guardians. And I think that the starting rotation for the Guardians, while yes, Shane Bieber and Tristan McKenzie are both very, very good, I think that the rotation that is headed by obviously Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, and Dylan Cease, who had a fantastic year last year, who I think is in the running. He could be in the running for Cy Young this year, but spoiler, I do not think Dylan Cease will win the AL Cy Young Award. But either way, I think that those three by themselves, along with hopefully Michael Kopech going into the rotation this year, and then, we'll just kind of see after that. But if that happens, even if it doesn't, that three-headed monster, if they can stay healthy and they perform to their ability, it's going to be a really, really hard rotation to stop at that point. So I'm going to go with the Chicago White Sox. I think they should have won it last year, and it just ended up not happening, obviously. But I think that they're going to bounce back this year. I think that they are much more talented as a unit than they showed last year, especially on the mound. Their pitching was awful last year. So we'll see if it turns around this year. So for right now, I am going to go with the Chicago White Sox. Over to the NL. So the NL Central I am going to start with. That's going to be the St. Louis Cardinals. I see no reason why they would not win this division. I quite frankly think that it is a one-team division, honestly. Because, let's just kind of think of the rest of the rest of the NL Central. The Cubs, who are clearly rebuilding and traded away everybody that was any good on their team, or let them go in free agency. The Cincinnati Reds, who are awful and will still be awful. And the Pirates, who are awful and will still be awful. Wait. That's not true. I think I've messed up somewhere. Did I mess up somewhere? No, I didn't mess up somewhere. The Brewers also took a huge step back in the offseason. So there you go. Forgive my hesitation there. For some reason, I thought I was mixing up my divisions. I'll tell you this. I don't know if it's just me, but can anybody explain to me why the Houston Astros are in the West? I don't know. Just, my divisions are all screwed up in my head. I feel like Pittsburgh is a little bit more east than, obviously the other teams are further. Just, you know what? We'll just forget that this ever happened. Just between you and I, guys, okay? Anyway, so I think the Cardinals are going to win the Central, and I don't particularly think it's going to be close. I don't think any team is even really in the running other than the Cardinals in that division, which is a stark contrast to the rest of the National League. So I think the Cardinals should be counting their lucky stars that the division's so bad because, honestly, I think if they weren't in that division, I think that they would struggle to make the playoffs with the rest of the talent in the National League right now. So, for me, Cardinals all the way there. So moving on to the NL West. So this was a close one. I very much could see the Dodgers or the Padres winning that division. And, this may just be recency biased, and this may just be because I have learned, I've kind of been forced to not have a different opinion on this for so long, but I just still, even with all of the new signings and the trades and everything that the Padres did this offseason, I just still don't think that they are going to be as good in the regular season as the Dodgers. I have said, every year the Dodgers are going to win the World Series. The Dodgers are going to win the World Series. The Dodgers are going to win the World Series. And, while they haven't won it every year, it's pretty clear that they are top 2 or top 3 in the best teams in the MLB pretty much every single year, no matter who's in their division, who they play against, or what's going on in the American League. It doesn't matter. The Dodgers are just always that good. And yes, they've lost some key players over the last couple of years, but I just still don't think that the Dodgers are going to be dethroned this year in the regular season. Do I hope it happens? Absolutely. I'd love to see the Padres take that division because I just feel like they are a little bit more of a fun ball club right now. They're young, they're hungry, and they're new. So, that's always fun in the MLB when a new team kind of rises to the top and starts to kind of bring their own brand of dominance. But I am going to go with the boring and safe pick, and I'm going to say the Dodgers reign supreme in the West for at least this season. Maybe next year I could see the Padres really crushing it. And the last one, and definitely the most difficult. So, who's going to win the NL East? Is it going to be the Braves, who won the World Series 2 years ago? Is it going to be the Mets, who made 5 quadrillion moves in the offseason? And even though they lost out on Carlos Correa, that team is absolutely stacked from top to bottom in their bullpen, in their rotation, in their lineup. Or is it going to be the Philadelphia Phillies, the team that I think in a lot of ways, shockingly, went to the World Series last year? What's going to happen? Who's going to win the division? So I am going to get this right off the bat. And I am going to say that the Mets are not going to win the division. What I have learned in my life is that the Mets typically end up being just a little bit short. So I am going to say that the Mets super team falls just a bit short. And I'm sorry to all of my Braves fans out there, but the Braves will not win the division either because I have the Philadelphia Phillies winning the division. Now, I will say this has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that they went to the World Series last year because, quite frankly, in my brain, it does mean absolutely zero that they went to the World Series last year. Everybody can have a great run in the postseason. But what people forget about this offseason is the Mets were not the only team that got a heck of a lot better this offseason. The Phillies, they made some crazy good moves. Taijuan Walker and Trey Turner stand out to me above the rest. So they added to an already fairly deep rotation. They added the perfect complementary and leadoff piece to that already very deep lineup. And they have guys on that team in Bryce Harper and in Kyle Schwarber that have been there before and will know what it takes to make the playoffs and perform in the playoffs. And I think everybody in the NL East knows that if you don't win the division, yeah, you might make the playoffs, but it's going to be really, really hard to get out of the first round of the playoffs in the East if you do not win it, because you're going to probably have to play the winner of your division or possibly the Dodgers or the Padres, who are just as good, if not better, as every team in the NL East right now. So, I think that if you don't win that division, the confidence level going into the playoffs will not be there for these NL East teams. And I think if anybody knows that, and anybody is going to be there and be ready to take on that challenge, it is that Phillies roster that just got done going to the World Series and is going to be motivated to get back and this time win it. So I am going to go out on a limb and probably be proven horribly, horribly, horribly wrong when the Phillies end up finishing third in their division. But I'm going to start out the year making a bold choice and say the Philadelphia Phillies will win the NL East. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I could see the Mets or Braves winning it, clearly. But this is why, we don't have the benefit of hindsight. We're going to see what happens, and who knows? Maybe the Mets and Braves are just going to fall apart with injuries, and the Phillies are just going to coast along. Or maybe the opposite's going to happen, and the Phillies, everybody's going to break both their legs, and the Phillies are going to win 60 games because they have no talent anymore because everybody broke their legs. So we'll see what happens. I hope it's not that second one or the first one, quite frankly, but we'll see what happens. I am going to go with the Phillies to start. So, now, on to the award winners for this upcoming season. Let's start with the one that I am least confident about necessarily. I'm going to go with the Rookie of the Year predictions. So, who do I think is going to be the National League Rookie of the Year? I'm going to go with Diamondbacks outfielder Corbin Carroll. So he kind of came up in the, late in the season for a cup of coffee, roughly 30 or so games, and put up a 1.2 WAR in those 30 games. So, that's pretty darn good. You're talking about an over 10 or an over whatever. What is it? Over about a 6 WAR season. If you play 162 games, that's pretty darn good. That's not going to lead the league or anything. Aaron Judge, I think, had like a 11 WAR year last season, and pretty much all of that came at the plate. But a 6 WAR as a rookie, that's pretty darn good. And his stats were nothing to be just super excited about. He hit like 260. He had 4 home runs in 30 games, had like 10 RBIs. It wasn't anything crazy. So could Corbin Carroll come up and improve upon those numbers and have like an 8 or 9 WAR season if he holds up defensively and win Rookie of the Year? I absolutely can see that happening. He's going to get a ton of playing time on a Diamondbacks team that is just, let's be honest, not going to be very good this year. They're going to be, scraping the bottom of the barrel in that division along with the Rockies. So, and I think the Rockies are going to be better than the Diamondbacks this year. So, for me, I'm going to go with Corbin Carroll, if anything, just because he's going to get a ton of playing time. Now, for me, I would go out on a limb and say the 2 Rookie of the Year winners last year were good players on really good teams. Obviously, Michael Harris on the Braves, who won close to 100 games, if not 100 games, somewhere around there for the Braves. And then, obviously, Julio Rodriguez for the Mariners last year. The Mariners obviously made the postseason, and he was fantastic. But I think this year, the trend is more going to be great players on bad teams that get a ton of playing time. So I am going to go with Corbin Carroll in the National League. And for the American League, I am going to go with Gunnar Henderson, sticking to that formula. A guy who, again, came up in the MLB for a cup of coffee last season, had about 30 games, just like Corbin Carroll. But Gunnar Henderson, I think, is going to be the everyday third baseman for the Orioles this season, but he also played shortstop for a few games last year. He also played second base for a few games last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he played some first base this year or some corner outfield this year as well. So I think this is a guy that's young, he's up and coming, he's going to have the flexibility to move all around the infield, and he was designated hitter a few times last year as well. So I think that he has the flexibility to always be in the lineup, and his bat warrants it as well. I think that he's a guy that could very easily hit 25 to 30 home runs in Camden Yards this year. So for me, I'm going to go with Gunnar Henderson as your AL Rookie of the Year. Now, moving on to the Cy Young Award. Let's jump, or at least stay with the American League with this one. Who is going to be the American League Cy Young Award winner? My heart wants to say Shane McClanahan, just because for me, obviously I have a personal connection with Shane McClanahan. We played travel ball together when we were young, for those of you who did not know that. And so it's been really awesome for me to see his meteoric rise to the top. Started the All-Star game last year. I could see it. However, I think oftentimes these awards go to the best pitcher on the best team. And while I don't necessarily think this team's going to be the best team, I think this team's going to be the second best team in the American League, and that would be the New York Yankees. I think it is finally time to crown Garrett Cole with a Cy Young Award. I really can just see him, especially with Carlos Rodon, having that weight taken off of his shoulders and just being dominant this year. I think that Garrett Cole will win the Cy Young Award. Do I want him to win it? Of course not. I'd much rather Shane win it. And I would be thrilled if Shane did win it. But I am going to go with my gut here and say Garrett Cole will win the Cy Young Award in 2023. And to the National League, I am going to go with a very unorthodox pick, but also a pick that people will probably roll their eyes at, because they're going to be saying, oh my gosh, what is this, 2013? 2014? You really think this guy's going to win it? I think he just might. And I think it's because he's on a much, much, much better team this year. I am going to go with Max Scherzer for the Mets this season. I think that with Justin Verlander in that rotation right now, I think the pressure is going to be off Max Scherzer to be as dominant. And I think that that's going to make him even more dominant, because he's going up against now your number 2 starter every week instead of your number 1 starter every week. And I think, quite frankly, Max Scherzer is going to want to prove that he's still got a ton left in the tank after a couple of, mediocre / injury-riddled seasons over the last little bit. So I think Max Scherzer is going to come in fully healthy for the New York Mets, and he is going to absolutely dominate for the Mets. And I am going to go out on a limb and say he will win Cy Young. Who is an alternative option? He's not on a good team, but keep your eye out for Sandy Alcantara. He led all pitchers in WAR by almost 2 whole points last year. So, yeah, he's really, really good, guys. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Sandy Alcantara, you guys watch out for him. He might sneak up on you and win Cy Young too, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to go with Max Scherzer. MVP. This was a tough one, not quite as tough as Rookie of the Year, just because, I just didn't really feel super up to snuff with all the rookies. So I am going to say that this MVP race is going to be really, really tough, as it is every year. It's tough to predict. I don't think anybody would have predicted Aaron Judge to win MVP last year. So we will see how it goes this year. But here are my predictions for the American League. I'm going to go with Yordan Alvarez. Now, I know. He's a designated hitter, and designated hitters don't win MVP. I get it. But let's be honest with ourselves. Unless your name is Shohei Ohtani, which I feel would be a very boring pick, unless somebody else has an unbelievable, historically good season like Aaron Judge did last year, Yordan Alvarez is not even close the best and most consistent power hitter in the American League. Aaron Judge had a fantastic year last year. He did. But to expect that every year, considering the first handful of years of his career and the way that they've gone, I think that that's pretty silly. He's been injury prone for a lot of his career. He's struggled later in seasons a lot in his career. So to expect him to hit 60-plus home runs every year, that's not going to happen. Shohei Ohtani is obviously another animal, a guy that's going to DH all the time, and he's going to be a great pitcher. So he's kind of unfair because obviously, there's an advantage when you're hitting that much and pitching. You're going to make much more difference for your team than especially just a designated hitter. But my goodness, there is something about Yordan Alvarez. He is just so dominant, and he is just so darn good at hitting. I mean, he's absolutely impossible at the plate sometimes. So I think that this is the year that Yordan Alvarez is going to put up 50 home runs and he's going to win MVP, because I just don't see Aaron Judge having nearly as dominant of it. Maybe not nearly. Like, he's not going to hit 65 home runs again. It's just not going to happen. At least, I don't think it's going to happen. I feel it'd be silly to expect that. And I don't see anybody in the American League right now that's going to come close to that home run total. So for me, I think Yordan Alvarez has such an unbelievably good hitting season as compared to the rest of the American League that they finally give the MVP to a designated hitter. I know, it's a controversial pick, and I certainly could see just Shohei Ohtani dominating and winning it again. But you know what? I find that a little bit boring right now, and I'm going out for an X Factor pick, a guy who was in the running for MVP last year, Yordan Alvarez. That's my pick. NL MVP, this one I feel was a much easier pick, which is crazy because I don't think anybody else is probably going to pick this person. But I have been around baseball a long, long time. And there is one man who has been slept on in the National League because of injury, because he did not play up to his standard last year when he came back from injury, and a guy who I think would have won the National League MVP 2 years ago when his Braves won the World Series had he not torn his ACL. That's right, all you Braves fans. I may not have given you the division, but I'm giving you the MVP. I think Ronald Acuna Jr. will be crowned as king in the National League this year. His power virtually disappeared when he came back from the ACL injury. He did not have that crazy home run potential that he did before his injury. But I think more importantly, his stolen base numbers were still there, which means his speed is still there, his defense is still there, and his leadership now is what needs to be there. If the Braves have any chance in that division, Ronald Acuna Jr. will have to return to MVP form, as far as I am concerned. I do not think they have a good enough rest of the team to beat the Phillies or the Mets if Ronald Acuna only hits 15 home runs next year. That's just how I feel. You guys might not agree with that, but that's how I feel. And I think that if Ronald Acuna can, one, stay healthy, and two, get the power back that we all know he has the potential to do this. I think Ronald Acuna Jr. can have a 40 home run, 40 stolen base season, and I think he can make it look easy. And guess what, guys? He's still super young. I think he's only like 24, 25. I want to look it up, but I'm not gonna. You guys still know he's very, very young. His career's not dropping off a cliff after his ACL injury. It's just not happening. He's going to have a full off season and a full spring training to get healthy and get that power swing back. And I think Ronald Acuna Jr. will win MVP in the National League this year.
Hey guys, me again. Thank you so much for watching one of my clips from the Lopes Goes Last podcast. These clips are so much fun to do. I absolutely love making them, and I absolutely love doing them. And this podcast is my baby, so I really want this thing to grow, and I really want it to succeed. So if you did like what you see, please subscribe. Also hit that bell notification so you never miss any one of my episodes or one of my clips like this one. And please do also like and share these videos with your friends and your family so that we can make this thing grow as fast as possible. And I wanted to thank you again so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a great rest of your day.